Looks like Steve Bannon might be going to jail. The 68-year-old former Trump advisor faces up to 2 years behind bars because of his refusal to participate in the January 6 investigation. And Steve Bannon is an extreme example of the noncompliance that January 6 Committee Vice Chair Liz Cheney called out last night.
We've seen bravery and honor in these hearings, and Ms. Matthews and Mr. Pottinger, both of you will be remembered for that, as will Cassidy Hutchinson. She sat here alone, took the oath, and testified before millions of Americans. She knew all along that she would be attacked by President Trump and by the 50, 60, and 70-year-old men who hide themselves behind executive privilege. But like our witnesses today, she has courage, and she did it anyway.
So what's next for all the others hiding from the investigation, especially given today's news regarding Steve Bannon? George Conway is a prominent conservative lawyer, and he joins me now. George, you said earlier today that Bannon looks like he's going out of his way to get the max time here. And for all the bravado going into this, I mean, there's no defense because he's basically just saying, like, the law doesn't apply to me. And generally, I feel like judges don't love that.
And judges definitely don't love that. They don't love defendants who are basically giving the finger to the court and to the legal system once they're found guilty, or even before they're found guilty. And here he was smirking, apparently, according to some reports, and smiling in the courtroom when the jury came back with the verdict. And I don't know what he did tonight on that other network, but I doubt he was giving, he was supposed to go on, and I doubt he was giving some kind of apology or expressing some kind of remorse for his failure to comply with the law. And he basically has been asserting that he's above the law. And then it came out that he had no defense. He simply defied the subpoena. He had no basis. The executive privilege was complete garbage because he hadn't been in the White House since 2017, and whatever he was talking about with Donald Trump certainly didn't have anything to do with the proper execution of Donald Trump's duties in office. So, he didn't put on a defense, and the jury, amazingly, the jury took time for lunch and convicted him in 2.5 hours. So pretty simple case, and I don't see. The real question is, how stiff a sentence is he going to get? I mean, he has a 30-day minimum on each count with a 1-year maximum. The judge, most sentences would be run concurrently, so he'd probably get a max of a year, 30 days to a year. But a judge could give him anywhere from 30 days to 2 years if he shows enough disrespect for the legal system. We'll have to see what the Justice Department asked for and what the pre-sentence report from the probation office says.
Yeah, and the lawyer for the January 6th, for the Department of Justice this week, said there's an urgency to the Select Committee's work. The Select Committee is looking at a violent assault at the U.S. Capitol on law enforcement, our democracy. We have limited amount of time in which to gather information, even as a threat to democratic institution continues. That's the general counsel of the January 6th committee. In terms of the urgency of getting the testimony, which the amount of testimony this committee has accrued, just as we've learned from the hearings, is pretty astounding. And I'm curious what you think of the work they've presented so far.
The work that they've done is absolutely outstanding. And I suspect that they could probably do another season's worth of these on the basis of the evidence that they already have in the bank. And apparently, if it's true, as Liz Cheney said, that the dams have opened up, and that's not surprising at all. There's no reason for sure to make that up, and it certainly makes sense given the fact that the jig is basically up and people are telling the truth and telling the story. We've got a lot more coming, and I think what's interesting is they've been coming at this whole post-election period in different ways with different witnesses in different directions for these 8 hearings that they've had. And even though we're covering some of the same ground each time, and those of us who have been paying attention to this since January of 2021 knew the basic outlines of the story, it's a gripping television and a gripping drama each time. Yeah. I mean, you just play different people telling their own perspectives and then putting it in the context, even if you're showing some clips that we've already seen, it's just astounding. I mean, none of it's surprising in the sense that we know how the story comes out, but it's just stunning to watch.
I wanted to ask about Pat Cipollone and his executive privilege claims. I mean, it's interesting because you keep seeing it's like a dog with one of those those collars to the invisible fence. Like they get to the privilege part and then they stop. Like he gets to what the president said and he stops talking. I don't know. My reading, amateur people I've talked to, there's not a lot there for the privilege claim he's making. What do you think of it?
First of all, there is no privilege claim to begin with because the privilege belongs to the United States. Okay, the privilege belongs to you and I as the taxpayer, and the privilege is certainly the attorney-client privilege. I can't imagine it's any broader than the executive privilege. And the D.C. Circuit and the U.S. Supreme Court have basically said, in the context of this investigation, the interests of the public in learning this information outweighs any possible executive privilege. And that's particularly in the context of the fact that he was not exercising the duties of his office. He was derelict in his duties. But to go one step further, though, if I'm the general counsel to a company and I am advising the CEO or the board of directors, and I do it through intermediaries like the chief assistant to the CEO, that's still privileged because the privilege belongs to the entire entity. And therefore, the privilege, if I tell, if the chief of staff comes to me and I'm the White House counsel and says the president wants the answer to X legal question, give me that answer and I will pass it on to him, that's a privileged conversation. And so this was all bullshit, if you will, because it's like anything he said to Meadows would be just just privileged as anything he would say to Trump.
Yeah, there's not some constitutional force feed. Yeah. Well, there's not some constitutional force field around Donald Trump as an individual, which is how it sort of seems to be. He's trying to sort of spin it in these depositions. But I'm glad you said that because it's been driving me a little crazy. George Conway, thank you for coming on with us tonight. Have a great weekend. Appreciate it.